FEZZIWIG Report, episode 3.5.
It's true. We had to break it into two parts because we had so much fun talking about the Ghost of Christmas Present, but we also had a blast in what you're about to see, which is when we talk about the Captain Picard version of, I know it's actually Patrick Stewart. It would be cool if they did a whole Star Trek universe version of Christmas Carol. They didn't. But we talk about the made-for-TV version of Christmas Carol starring Patrick Stewart, and we both enjoyed it so much, and there's so much there that we had to just cut it as a section, its own segment. So
there you go. So we're going to skip
back. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to cut to that in just a second.
We're going to skip right over the Christmas beverages and get right to it.
That's right.
We're now going to talk about one of my like it's one of my three favorites. And but I think in some ways it's very much beloved for me. It's charming, it's delightful, it's very intimate and lovely, and that's the I'll affectionately call it the Captain Picard Christmas Carol. It's Patrick Stewart, made for TNT, 1999. I want to be clear, you can watch it online. I think you watched it maybe on a Hallmark channel or Amazon Prime. I think it's available. I don't like talking about versions that aren't available.
It's on Prime for $3.
It's on Prime for $3, and I think it's well worth your time if you've never seen it.
Yes.
So just to paint the picture very quickly, and then I want to hear your initial reaction to it. Very quickly, 1999, TNT, made for TV. Paige, actually, in episode 1.5 of the FEZZIWIG Report, told us she actually felt that the animated version was more realistic than the Captain Picard version, which makes sense.
The animated one being the Robert Zemeckis auto capture, whatever. Yes.
Yeah, the Disney's 2009 Christmas Carol, which makes sense because this was on a TV budget. But the context I wanted to give you is, think about Patrick Stewart, a stage actor for his entire life, who then had become famous on Star Trek: The Next Generation as Captain Picard. That had been over for 5 or 6 years. They'd only made a couple of the Star Trek movies at that point. The best ones they had made at that point. So that was kind of on a downside. He was past like the 2 or 3 best Star Trek movies that he was going to do. And X-Men had not come out yet.
Wow.
For Patrick Stewart, it came out.
Like, is he a has-been now? Is he a has-been?
Huh?
So their question is he a has-been at this point? Like, that's the question.
In '99, I think he probably at that point had filmed X-Men, but I don't think anyone could have predicted where that was going to go for him or for comic book movies. But yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, he played Scrooge. How many times do you think he had ever been on stage playing Scrooge? It has to have been in the hundreds, probably thousands. Like,
this
literally.
is an idea for me, because you had explained to me something that I did not realize. So you said, like Shakespeare, if you're a British actor, if you're a male actor at some point in England, you're going to play Scrooge. Like, right. That's a new idea for me. So I didn't realize that, but once you explained it to me, I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay,
yeah, and he's a well-renowned British actor. Had been probably out of I would think, while he was doing TV and movies and stuff for a little bit, but. I don't know whose idea it was to get him. It could have very well been his idea. I want to do a Christmas Carol. I've done it a million times. But this version has it is the most theatrical in the sense that it feels like watching a play.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's intimate.
Most since 1935. Is that the British one? The one that I liked? 1935?
Seymour Hicks, 1935, yeah.
That Seymour Hicks one, I was just thinking today that I wanted to say when we talked about that one, because he'd done it on stage. Remember, that's the one where Marley's ghost isn't shown.
Right.
And he's like acting it out against nothing. And it reminded me of when we took like theater classes in college and you saw those pictures of those great Shakespearean actors who'd like do the pose. They were famous for having when you saw the ghost, you had a moment.
Yeah.
Like that's how that dude did it in 1935. But so it's the most theatrical since that one by far.
Mm-hmm.
Most like stage theater production version.
So tell me what you thought.
Okay, I loved it. So what's really funny is you said it's in my top 3, and since I know what we're talking about next episode, I actually know what your top 3 are, and I'm embarrassed to say, because I like to be different, but those are absolutely my top 3 as well.
Redoing this and watching them every year, they just rise to the top.
And by the way, for everyone who's paying attention to this, Jeremy has really been very careful about boundaries and not something people say about Jeremy a lot. Because in the sense that you have not told me much about anything of any of them before I watch them.
Sure.
And you've been really careful not to sort of say you're going to like or not like these.
Oh, yeah, okay.
With the exception of early on, you were like, I didn't really like the Albert Finney version, but we've already discussed the fact that I didn't believe you until I saw it.
Right.
But so I didn't know, but okay, Patrick Stewart won.
Yeah.
I really, the production value bothers me, period. There's no way around it. It is
All right.
a TV production.
That's fine.
It has maybe my favorite casting of any of them across the board.
Okay.
I absolutely love Patrick Stewart as Scrooge.
Sure.
I love how he owns it. I love how he's not trying to put on this ancient role and fill the shoes of such and such. He is really, it is a pardon me for sounding frou-frou, it is a very psychologically informed portrait of Scrooge. He is thinking about the real life of this character, and that's showing forth, and I love that. There's freedom in this movie. There's freedom in his interpretation. I think the casting of Dominic West as Fred and Richard Grant as Cratchit is beyond inspired.
I'll just say it right now. Just say right now, he's the best Fred in any version you'll find.
He's the best Fred.
He's the best Fred.
Here's what blows my mind. He's the best Fred because if you've watched The Wire and you got to know Dominic.
That's right. We should say he's McNulty from The Wire for
he's
people
McNulty.
who don't know the name. Yeah.
What I love about Dominic West as exemplified in his character in The Wire is what he's best at is being joyful and funny while also without being an airhead. Like there's depth to his joy. There's layers to his decision to exhibit that charity.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a principled thing that doesn't mean that he just goes through life gallivanting carelessly. And Dominic West portrays that beautifully.
It's like gravitas. That's what you're looking for.
Thank you.
It's a joyful spirit with gravitas. We almost never look at Fred as an example for Scrooge so much as a nice person that Scrooge should be,
right.
He should be nice to. But Fred actually could be a model for how Scrooge could live his life, and Dominic West plays that perfectly.
I'm like Dickens. I get paid by the words, so one word. Why say one word when 20 will do?
He bursts on the screen, and it's just life, and it's just life right there. But let's not take away from what you said, which is that the star is Captain Picard. And the kind of performance he gives is the kind of performance you can only give if you've done this so many times and you love it and you love playing this character. I noticed something very different this time, and I know I keep calling it the Captain Picard version. Obviously, I'm a huge Trek fan.
Right.
Just for people who would question my Trek knowledge, literally this year I completed a rewatch of every single minute of every single Star Trek that's ever been created.
You did. I followed him on Facebook.
So before I get people, like, oh, he's just saying that. Like, I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. But sorry, Doctor Who fans.
No, you're not. You're not sorry.
No, I'm not sorry. I'm kidding. But in any case, there's a wonderful thing that I noticed this time, and that's one of the reasons we watch these every year. You'll learn something new every time. You don't have to take our word for it. But this time, watching him with Marley, he kind of interviews Marley a little bit like he's the captain of the Enterprise and Marley is a strange alien creature.
He's in the chair.
It's his reading of lines like, why do spirits walk the earth? Why do they come to me? Which in other versions, when Scrooge says that, it's more like shock. It's like, why are there ghosts? Why are you here? Like that's the thing.
Explain it to me why.
Picard is like, he wants to know all about spirits. He's like, why are there spirits? Why do they come to me? I love that terrible line reading I just gave. But my point is that he's inquisitive, which is a really interesting choice because it starts the process of like, maybe Scrooge isn't so much of a bad guy. He's just hard and mean.
Well, it shows up. First of all, he's smart.
He's smart.
This is the first Scrooge that I can think of. Well, that's not true because I think George C. Scott does it as well. But this is one of the Scrooges where you realize, no, Scrooge is he's not just cruel or unscrupulous or whatever. He's a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And he plays him as a brilliant guy who's socially awkward.
Yeah.
And has lived into the pattern of that and used his money and his acumen, his brilliance as an insulator to keep him safe from the world that scares him. And so when you see at the end when he gets it out, when he gets to be the single goofiest part in the whole, in almost any of the ones we watch, is him just learning how to laugh.
He tries to laugh. Yeah.
Problematic. It's problematic. But then they do a scene that's not in any of the other ones, where they show him go to church, and like he walks in and the guy tells him, like, does the little hat gesture to like take off your hat, you're in church, and he like, oh yes, tips his hat at him, and then goes to, no, you have to take it off, and he's like, oh right, and so then he gets into the pew and sings with him and decides he's going to sing out loud, and then he walks, when he comes into Fred's house, and he like peeks, he can't even get in the door, he like peeks in the door and he's like, can I come in? And you're like, oh God, he's not sure he'll let him in.
Right.
There's other movies, including George C. Scott's, which I love, where he's pretty convinced that he'll be fine. But in Picard's version,
he's timid. He's timid a little bit because he's like relearning how to be human. He's relearning how to be that. And that was what I was going to say when you were talking about the hat tip at the church. Yeah. There's so many little touches like that throughout this entire version that make it feel intimate, like you're watching people who made conscious choices for what they're doing. It feels like a stage production because of that. There's no throwaway parts. There's no moment where you don't think they actually had a discussion of like, how would the kids play this? Like, how would, like, they're all teasing Tiny Tim at one point because he's trying to talk with his mouth full, and like it's cute, like all the kids, like, and you could tell that they went through that. They were like, well, how would you tease your brother if he was trying to get something out, like in a loving way, you know? But in the church, he gets to church, and not only is there that hat tip thing, which I didn't even clock, but when he's in the pew, there's this gentleman next to him who can see that he's having trouble and leans over and shows him the hymnal. What better way to reintroduce someone to society than show that people are willing to help you?
That's right.
People are willing to extend love to you, you know, if you let them.
Also, as like a guy who's like churchy all the time, that's like, you know, so that's Church of England, and I'm an Episcopalian, which comes from Church of England.
Yeah.
I won't speak for other denominations, so it may be true for them too, but that's like peak Episcopalian. If you show up to an Episcopal church and you don't know what you're doing, the person in the pew next to you will 100%, even if they're the meanest person at your church, mean as a snake, don't like anybody, they will still lean over and say, we're right here. It is the most, that was like an insider move. So many times when you watch movies, when they show people in church, you can tell that they just thought they were supposed to add that, but they don't know anything about religion. Between the opening scene in the back room, in this what's called the sacristy of the church, or the vestry, depending, but the space in the back room of the church after Marley's funeral, with the parish registry. Between that scene and the scene in the church, whoever directed this movie knows the culture.
It's a really interesting point, especially tied in with the Christian imagery that we talked about earlier in this episode.
We can't not talk about Richard Grant before we go. We can't not talk.
We can talk about Richard Grant. Just a couple of things I just want to mention about this.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it's so worth watching. But there are little tastes of music throughout. And you remember we talked about a Muppet Christmas Carol, and I said I don't hum any of those songs throughout the year, like they're not memorable. There's like 2 bars of a song in this one that I'm just like, it might be June and I'm walking around and I just sing it in my head. Like there's a mischievous topper who's a one-line character in the book, but who gets this really mischievous scene that's so delightful in this version. The Fran, oh my God, like the Fran in this version, she loves him so much that it's like a case for, you are worth saving if someone loves you that much, or if you've ever been able to experience love that much. Talk about Richard Grant, because I think he gets overshadowed by everything else. To be honest with you, I like him, but I think he gets overshadowed by everything. I think he's serviceable, but what makes him so special for you?
Well, so first of all, Richard Grant's one of those actors that he's a character actor that almost always plays really odd people, really offbeat. I was introduced to him first as one of the villains in Hudson Hawk. No, it's true though. And he usually plays really odd, oftentimes sexually perverse, just very offbeat characters. Most recently and fantastically in I'm gonna forget the name of the movie, but he plays a character. He's in a movie with Melissa McCarthy called something like yeah, I'm sorry or something. I forget what it's called, but she plays a plagiarist and he helps her sell her plagiarized goods. It's a phenomenal movie, but he's just one of these guys where I was like, he never plays something straight on. It always comes from an angle.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like kind of shocked because Cratchit's kind of whole deal is he is exactly who you think he is. He is just so plain. And so what he plays it straightforward, but there is this real, they really make a point of showing his teeth, which they make a point of making sure you know are not pretty.
Yeah.
And he has this moment when at the end when Scrooge is like, I'll double your pay, and he like runs towards him almost to embrace him, and Richard Grant picks up the fire poker to defend him.
Yeah.
And there's this like fear in him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of times I think Cratchit can be too simple. Almost a simpleton who just likes everything and is like genuinely believes that Ebenezer Scrooge is the founder of the feast. When the reality is for him to say that is a matter of principle, as you've pointed out.
Yeah.
And so Richard Grant, because he's such a genuinely, often just plays these genuinely conflicted and odd characters, I just see a lot of soulfulness in his eyes. When he says, I'm actually happy, he's not happy.
Yeah.
When Scrooge comes at him, like, who's Scrooge to just all of a sudden make a joke with this guy?
Oh, without a doubt.
He plays the like, beaten up puppy who's like, who do you think you are? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
I just found little moments like that really telling. And I just thought, but with him and Cratchit and with him as Cratchit and Scrooge and Dominic West as Fred and a really wonderful Father Christmas, Spirit of Christmas Present. To me, you saw some really phenomenal, like a really phenomenal sense of.
You've made the case for me, absolutely.
But he's not the most exciting Cratchit, but there's a soulfulness to him that I really appreciate, and I think
it's an understated, complex performance that if you're not in tune with it, you kind of might take it for granted, like I did. So thank you, because I think you're absolutely right. Everything that you just said is 100% true. Those moments that make him a little bit more complex, you absolutely feel his pain about Tiny Tim. And you feel the family rally around him when he's saying, and we'll never treat each other unkindly, will we? And he's using that, he might even be using that moment against them, like in a good way, but they rally around him at that point. So I think you make absolutely good points. But again, I feel like the fabric of that is because this feels theatrical. I'd love to know, because it almost feels like they rehearsed this significantly in order to get there. And maybe because I'm just putting that bias because Patrick Stewart is who he is, that maybe that's just me like imagining that that's what it was. It could have been a 3-day shoot. Like, who the hell knows? I mean, but it feels like it's a lived-in production. It definitely loves the story. There's beautiful music.
The text that other ones don't.
A little bit, yeah. But then again, they also extrapolate some beautiful moments, like the prison singers and the boat at sea. And there's this beautiful silent moment.
I love it. I'm just always disappointed whenever he actually says, you know, you'll observe Christmas by losing your job in this one instead of saying lose your
situation. Yeah.
I just love lose your situation.
Yeah, so but the way Picard says it, like losing a job. Like it's
just funny because they make a point of like saying clerk appropriately, like Clark.
Clark, yeah.
They get that right, but they switched. Whatever.
We want people to seek out these versions and watch them, and this is so worth your time if you've never seen it, whether you're a Patrick Stewart fan or not. And at this point in society, how are you not? Like that was my point about bringing him up in 1999. Yeah. He was famous, no doubt. But social media and the X-Men and so many other things have just blasted him into the stratosphere in terms of public figure-ness. And so if you didn't even know that there was a Patrick Stewart Christmas Carol, now's your time. Phil, this has been great. I am very excited. It's bittersweet, but we're heading into our final episode. So next week we'll be talking about the two versions that are, that make up the triad of my favorites, which are 1951 Alistair Sim, 1984 George C. Scott. We're going to have some fun with those. We're going to talk about those. I'm going to I'm gonna try to blow your mind again. Like, to be honest with you, it
I
was.
wasn't sure you'd be able to do it twice, but you've done it once.
Let's see if I can do it again, and I'm welcome for you to return the favor. Again, every time we post one of these, we'll be posting links to organizations that we hope you will consider supporting at this time of year. Every amount is impactful. I'm going to give a plug for another Los Angeles. I'm in LA. I'm going to give a plug for another LA organization that is near and dear to my heart, because I actually work with this organization. It's called Wise Readers to Leaders. It comes from my synagogue community, and we have a program that now is in its 10th year. And the mission of Wise Readers to Leaders is to bring about 500 young scholars from underserved LAUSD school districts to campuses during the summer for supplemental literacy, supplemental tutoring, confidence building activities. It's a summer-long program that helps kids go from the summer slide, which can happen to certain students, and turn it into the summer stride. So the program helps, like I said, through literacy, year-round. Their reading programs, we get them books, we get them school supplies for the summer, and it's been proven and shows improvement in their school performance during the full year. Obviously, in this year, it's been enormously difficult because of distance learning. But the staff and the teachers and the volunteers who work with this program have been keeping it going for kids remotely all year. So kids have been getting this tutoring all year. They've been getting reading and literacy help all year. And we really hope that by the time summer 2021 rolls around, that we can have all of these wonderful kids back on these campuses, getting the full program. So the URL is on the screen. And we'll add it to the comments here. And we hope that you'll consider a donation to wisereaderstoleaders.org. So, Phil, thank you so much. Can't wait to see you next time on the FEZZIWIG Report. And we just want to remind you that you may not have a dime to your name, but the happiness you give is quite as great as if it cost a fortune.